You are tired of average. You want more out of life. You know you're capable of something greater. This show will help you become resilient in your home, at work, and in your community. Welcome to the Resilient Humans Podcast with your host, Kevin Wood. Welcome back to the Resilient Humans Podcast. And today's guest is someone who has spent nearly 3 decades not just doing the job, but thinking deeply about how to do it well. Scott Hewlett is a second-generation firefighter with many years of experience in a variety of roles: technical rescue, paramedic, training officer, and a peer support leader. He's also the host of the Multiple Calls podcast, where he dives into the realities of the fire service and the people behind it. He's also somebody that I've learned from personally. When I was at the Southwest Fire Academy, Scott was instructing ladders that day. And what stood out wasn't just his knowledge, but his patience. If someone didn't understand something, he stayed with them until they got it and understood it. Scott is big on balancing grit with softness, challenging the advice we take for granted, and reminding people not to let anyone steal a single day of their career. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Right on. Now, I want to start off with your podcast. You've interviewed over 100 firefighters, and over the few that I've listened to, I've found there to be a few common themes. I don't know if you listened to that episode, my lessons from fire school. Do you agree with me on those themes? And if you do, we can dive into that. Or are there other common themes that you've seen between all of them that I may not have picked up on yet?
No, I definitely agree with the points you drew out. And it was great for you to highlight those. I think one thing that stands out as well is a lot of people come to the fire service from different angles and different backgrounds. Some never even thought of joining. It's not always, from childhood. And I saw my first fire truck and I wanted the job. So it's something that's common amongst everybody, but it's the difference, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what makes doing the podcast endless, is because you can sort of reach the end of talking about culture and leadership and some of these, not that they're low-hanging fruit, but they can get talked out, right? But people's personal stories and the impacts of their life are so various, right? So it's endless. You can just keep doing episodes because every person's slightly different.
And that's what I find with the Resilient Humans. There's no end. We've gone through addictions. We've gone through people that have gone through, health crisis or obesity, whatever it was. There's as many stories as there are people on earth, and they're all interesting. It's just a matter of pulling that story out of people. And some people aren't ready to tell it, and that's okay too.
True. And I like to, when it's the guest's first time on, because I've had a couple people on him multiple times, to do their backstory, because I find it's, until you get into what they think, I think it's important to know them a little bit as a person, so you start to understand why they think that way.
Great.
So I think the backstory is important.
Great segue. Scott, let's hear your backstory. I'd love to hear it.
How far back do you want to go?
Let's go. So yeah, were you that kid that, saw your first fire truck and was like, that's what I want to do? Because you've been in this for many, many years, almost 3 decades now. So right. Obviously it was something that you wanted to do from a young age. What got you interested in firefighting? Well,
my dad was on the job when I was born. He never fully immersed me in it and exposed me to it. I, was in the station here and there. We lived about a half an hour away from Brampton. We were in Orangeville. So it wasn't like it was just down the street, right? So there wasn't a lot of opportunities to go by the station and sort of engage. And actually, as I got older and thinking about what I wanted to do, I guess that rebellious teen part of you was sort of focusing on doing something different than what Dad did, like wanting to blaze your own trail. And I initially wanted to be a pilot, and I didn't know in what format, but that was my initial thought. And I sort of went down that avenue a little ways, got turned off from it. Fortunately or unfortunately. Fortunately, I'm glad this ended up the way it did. But unfortunately, I think having a couple poor instructors, which was a kind of a lead in to me later on realizing what I didn't want to be for people when I was instructing. So from ski patrolling, And just because I wanted to ski for free. Your young teen don't have the money. So, and that let my buddy and I, get out and ski for free. I realized that I really enjoyed helping people, and, had some more serious injuries that I had to deal with. And found I was learning quickly and was good in those situations. So it just kind of naturally led to, well, what do I do for the rest of my life that's not your normal office job and is active and helping people? And so it's just obvious, right? It was in the blood. I was just kind of denying it to myself in a way. And thank goodness I realized it when I did, and ended up getting on at 23. So pretty young, right? Prefrontal cortex still isn't fully developed, and they let me ride a fire truck, which is wild. It's interesting how it took me 4 years to get on, and there was no firefighter 1 and 2 back then. You were just taking a lot of courses and we're still spending a lot of money, but just taking courses and trying to build up a resume. And eventually it's like, why, I deserve this job, and I know I can do a great job. And if they just give it to me, and then the first night you're rolling down, to your first call, and you're thinking, I can't believe they gave me this job. Right. So this is the quickly reality sets in, right? And the self-doubt and the worry. But when you're around good people and they realize that they probably had the same first night experience or first year experience, and they start guiding you and scaffolding you, and then that's the example of people that you do want to be like, you realize that you're going to be okay.
When you look at rookies on the job now, what do you wish they knew that you know now? What would you like to impart on those new firefighters?
You touched on a couple things there about not letting someone steal a day of your career away from you. That's a really big one. Because every department, and within that department, every platoon, and within that every platoon, every crew kind of can have its own personality. And you sometimes get lucky with who you're with, or unlucky. And you can either recognize that you're unlucky and that, get kind of disenchanted and disenfranchised and down about it, or not know what you're in, and then just sort of toe the line and become like the people you're around, and not realize that you're losing the opportunity and being the kind of firefighter that you want to be. Like you're an adult, you're a professional, this is your job, this is your career. You should be able to get to choose how you want to see it and how you want to perform and who you want to be. Of course, there's some limitations to, you can't kick the door in, every day and do whatever you want. But there are things you can do, like seeking outside training and going to conferences, and even that's on your own dime, or listening to podcasts. So I think that would be the main thing. And then just reminding people that they are literally drowning in firefighter information now. Podcasts, YouTube videos, conferences, like being ignorant to things or not getting the training that you need is kind of, it's on you, because it's all available. It's like, how much do you want to know? How deep do you want to go? What kind of person do you want to be? So I wish like I was starting now, because I came to all this, not that I wasn't being given good information and good guidance back when I got on. It's just different now. So, I got lucky with the people I was around and got that guidance. But now if you're around people that aren't being supportive of you, you can get that support elsewhere. And I speak often about thinking of yourself as a member of the fire service in general, and not necessarily just a member of your department, because sometimes the frustrations can really beat you down. But if you see yourself as a firefighter in the fire service and that's your family, you can really connect. You can use social media and the internet for, what it's actually should be used for is actually connecting with people that, can help you improve your life. And that can really fill your bucket, whatever cliche phrase you want to use, but, give you some support and guide you towards where you want to be. So yeah, it's all at your fingertips. And lastly, what I'll say is, I think what then people need, and I might have said this to your class when we were together, is you need someone to filter for you. So if you have good experienced people that have gone down the rabbit holes, what they can do is help you filter the information that you're seeing, so that not every YouTube video in the apparatus bay with beaners and webbing and a fancy trick is useful, right? So
Correct.
you need someone to help you figure out what is applicable and what's not.
And it hasn't been released yet. But by the time this is up, it will have been. I interviewed Jesse Bond, the
Awesome.
president of SFA, and we kind of talked about that. And I mentioned to him, it's great that the instructors there say, here's what you need to know for the test and the book. Here's what you're going to do in real life. And let's practice both. So I appreciated that there was that line drawn between the two, and that we were actually given the opportunity to say, like, or practice and say, this is what you're going to see when you're on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and a key thing,
we understand that the textbook exists and that's there, but this is what you're going to see.
Right. And it is easier sometimes to meet the JPR than it is to do the job.
Mm.
So it's beyond that. And I think we probably all said this to you at some point, that specifically, especially with SFA, it's very quick, right? And people like, and not only like it because it's a great place to learn how to be a firefighter, but you can also get it done in a short period of time. And then summer crew classes are like this too, right? They're very quick. So you're inundated constantly with information, and it's kind of impossible for you to learn everything really well because things take a lot of reps and a lot of time. So you're getting exposure to things, but you're not necessarily learning them. So just that, and that opens up their mindset for the future of like, this is an endless craft and you're a student the entire time. And as long as you have that mindset and you keep going with it, then you'll do well.
I felt blessed going to school because I had about 2 years of volunteer experience, and our department have really good people there. Like they're I won't say anti-textbook, but they're like, there's better ways of doing it. And so a lot of the stuff that we practiced at our department was reviewed for us at the school. So the people that came in completely green, like this was their very first experience throwing a ladder or pulling hose. For me, that would have been like, whoa, there's way too much here. Whereas I kind of got to take a little bit of a step back and observe more. We actually did a scenario day with Brad on like the second to last day or something like that, where we kind of put it all together. And there was an odd number, and he asked if I could sit out and just observe. And I was like, I would love that. So he gave me a tick. I went in the smokehouse and just watched and listened to all the crews working. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, I'm learning so much more observing the other people doing it than if I were to do it myself, because I've done this multiple times and had multiple reps done with it. So anyway, it was really cool of him to give me that opportunity, and I don't think that would have happened anywhere else. So
yeah, and I think the textbooks can get a lot of bad rap, and trust me, there's plenty of examples of where the textbook's wrong.
yeah,
And they are doing a better job at trying to align the textbooks with what actually happens. But the caveat I'll give is that you do kind of have to learn what's in the box before you learn what's outside the box. So you need foundational things. And if it gets your feet wet and kind of like sets a foundation, and then people can build on that foundation, I think that's the perfect storm. Yeah, it's a key thing that we do at SFA, that we don't have to take the extra time. Like ladders specifically, you mentioned that, right? We don't have to take the extra time at the end of the day to show you, okay, this is outside of your JPRs, but here's where you should get to eventually. And then you can leave that day going, okay, I know where I'm at, I know where I got to get to, and I can either choose to do the work between here and there or not. And I don't think me standing in front of the class and just saying that to you is way different than you actually doing the skill for the first time and seeing how far away from it you actually are.
right. Yeah. And that was awesome. That was one of the best parts of the entire experience.
Nice.
I love that you have brought up, I've read it, or it was in one of your, in your bio, I think here, you talked about balancing grit and softness, which to most people listening might sound contradictory. I'd like to know what that balance actually looks like in a firefighter or just in a person in general.
Mm-hmm. When I talk about the connected warrior, so that's an episode that I put in, I narrated that presentation basically. And it was it's an article on the Firefighter Nation website. So you can look that up and read it if you want. So it dives sort of into these details. It was funny, last night I was giving this presentation and I was asking the group, like, am I considered old school now because I've been on 28 years. But when I started, I was not old school. Like old school was the people that were on 28 years when I got on. So really old school is only what's old and relative to you in your career. And if old school's better, like, well, how far back do you want to go? Do you want to go back to bucket brigades? Like you started it with a truck, probably with a pump on it and hose. And so that's new school compared to the old school before you. What we normally think of when we think old school is tough, right? And why? You think about the greatest generation and the world wars and the depression and the things that those people had to go through. And you needed toughness, you needed grit. And we think about that generation, and that's really what stands out. It's not that these people weren't capable of love. I mean, people had people they loved. It's not like love just got created in the new generation. And the toughest people, even the movies and the heroes that we all like get drawn to, like why is John Wick out killing people, right? The first movie, someone killed his dog. Like he obviously loves his dog. You can go down the list of why these heroes go. Like Gladiator, like why does that story have so much power? Because his family was killed and taken from him. So these heroes that we see as tough, they also have this love within them. We know they do, and that's why we're rooting for them, because that resonates with us. So when I say old school and tough, I'm not saying that the people in that generation didn't have the ability to be empathetic and compassionate, but with a different time, it's just a different culture, and there was a lot of toughness that needed to be had, and it was beneficial with this job. What I don't think was celebrated in the culture enough was, being able to engage in an empathetic, compassionate way with people when you went to help them. And what then came from that was this idea that you have to create an emotional barrier between you and the people that you're helping in order to quote unquote do your job. And I won't be able to do my job unless I do that. It's almost, so it pins from one end to the other, right? Either I'm going to be too overwhelmed with emotion and I can't help, and I'm going to be curled up in the fetal position on the road and I can't help this family out of this car. Or I'm going to be an unfeeling robot and not even care that there's human beings in the car, and I'm just going to focus on the car and cut the metal. So we can get very binary that way. And I've always been a very sensitive person. I was a sensitive kid, that didn't always do me very well through school. And I'm glad that it hasn't been beaten or wrung out of me, that it persevered and it lasted. You talk about being resilient and perseverance. So I'm glad that it somehow has carried through despite, the world not necessarily being very nice a lot of the time. And I think in quiet ways or within my own mind, I was a bit confused because I'm in this environment and I can't really open up in this way or show that I have these feelings inside about, why can't I engage with people in this way and still do the job? I feel like I can, right? I feel like there's moments where I had, and there were small moments along the way where I, would be empathetic and compassionate, like place a hand on someone's head and talk to them softly and calm them down. And then, the ambulance crew came in and they weren't necessarily that way, and they were very abrupt and hard. And, the patient now is, back to where they started, and we need to, they're not calm anymore. And the captain would acknowledge, like, wow, like you really had them calm down. And then, those guys came in and acted this way and blew the whole scene up. So there were kind of like flags along the way of like, okay, maybe this is something that I can integrate. And then obviously with peer support, seeing people having trouble dealing with calls. And I think that talks to the old school too, that, alcohol and addiction and these unhealthy coping mechanisms they're obviously a way to numb out this graphicness and this pain and this hurt and the stuff they're dealing with. So this idea of this emotional barrier you have to put between you and these other people to do your job, it's obviously not working. Like, so why do we keep promoting it to do it? And then there were calls along the way where, I know that myself and the rest of the people that were there, because this became more the norm in my department, that we were able to, so I see the toughness and the softness as like a dimmer switch. Again, firefighters are super binary. It's either one or it's the other. And I see it as like a dimmer switch. And this is what I was trying to convey to you guys whenever I could, that some skills that you do firefighting take 100% grit. Like, you have to suck it up and get this thing done. Like throwing ladders in the snow is not something where empathy lives. Like, You need to
Right.
suck it up and do this thing. You need 100% grit. And then there's times where there's nothing physical to do with the people that you're there with in the family because there's been a loss and there's nothing we can do to help them. And that situation may take 100% compassion, right?
True.
But then you can find all these nuanced calls in between that take 60% one and 40% the other, or 70-30, whatever balance that is. So what I'm saying is I feel the most effective first responders know how to adjust that dimmer switch in real time so that they're actually showing up as the most effective first responder for the people they're helping, and they feel loved and cared for. And then the benefit for you as an individual, as a firefighter, is that these terrible calls that I went on, that I knew I was a good human being and was connected with my emotions and what was actually happening in the moment. When I look back on that call, I feel a real great sense of pride in doing the job that way and providing that love and that care. So I don't just carry forward the graphicness and the harshness and the brutality of whatever it was. So if I shut off from that and I don't engage with it, all I take is the shit. And then that's why you have a hard time processing these calls and moving on. And that's why you have to stuff them away and you can't deal with them, is because you haven't brought all of yourself. So ironically, by you shutting off from engaging with that, you actually harm, or you're not as good for the people that you're there to help, and you're actually harming yourself.
Do you think that's an identity issue? Like somebody identifies as I'm the tough guy or I'm the soft guy. And is that hard to break, or is that just a practice thing?
Well, that's built through just in general in culture. When you could talk about masculinity and how it was seen throughout the generations and how it's seen now, and the job and that is hyper masculine, right? And when I say hyper masculine, that is like, if anybody thinks, oh, that's a bad term, that's not a bad term. Like, this is the whole point, that we're really struggling with what masculinity is, and that label of toxic masculinity. Right. And so then what are we supposed to be? Yeah, we're supposed to do the most dangerous jobs in the world that no one else wants to do, but we're also supposed to not be very hard and robust, right? You're not supposed to, but you have to be able to deliver that, but you're told something else. So it's a very confusing time. And I think until this is that whole thing, to use a more, new age phrase, like, you can't be what you can't see. So that also applies to men, right? So what I thought as being in the peer support team, and I really wanted people to engage emotionally with the job in the proper degree to best serve the people and actually help themselves. And I realized the only way I can get them to quote unquote buy in or listen to that side of it is if I'm able to do the gritty things. So I can't be unable to be gritty and tough and do the job when it needs to be done, and then be preaching this other side of things, because I'll be labeled or identified as one thing. So they needed the confusion of seeing me be both sides of that coin. And by that, it makes people stop and curious, and they're like, well, wait a minute, you can do the job and be effective and be a really good human being by being this way. So I'm not saying I was that way all the time. We're human and we make mistakes and we're not perfect, but that was my underlying thought. And it's sort of been a guiding light for me along the way.
I do like how you described it, more of a dial than a light switch. I've talked about that multiple times on this show. People with their nutrition, they're either on or they're off. I'm like, well, maybe today's a 5 out of 10, not just a 0 out of 10. Like, we can move the dial as opposed to just saying, screw it and whatever.
Right. I think people don't want to engage in this emotional way and at any level out of fear. So I think,
is that a judgment thing?
Well, I think people are afraid that if they fully know, so I would recommend that everybody looks into how to downregulate their nervous system. So firefighters are terrible at only ever upregulating, and they don't know how to downregulate. So that's a key thing I'd like to leave people with, to do some more homework on. But they're worried that if I'm fully able to relax and calm down and be soft, that I won't be able to flip the switch or dial it up when I need to. So I need to stay in this fight mode all the time because I need to always be ready, right?
That's a terrible spot to be.
So you're also afraid of You've learned over through your culture and through the fire department that your only value to people and the way you earn love is by being this way, right? By being hard, by always being dependable, by always being tough, by never stopping, and falling to your knees. Like that's the way you earn love. So you can't possibly show anything other than that, right? And then I think there's also the fear of confrontation. So if I'm always the alpha male, and that's always what I'm presenting to you, you're way less likely to confront me on anything. So I don't have to, I don't have to engage with anything that might be outside of my comfort zone because I'm always pushing that front on you.
Right. I've done an episode on, I call it balanced resiliency. And there's two sides of it. A lot of people, like I ask everybody, and I'll ask you at the end of this as well, what your definition of resiliency is. And the traditional form of resiliency is tough, grit, do hard things, perseverance, overcome adversity, like all the hard side of it. But there is a soft side of it. And after interviewing a lot of people on this, the other side of it that I didn't really pick up on at the start was the soft side of it. And it's compassion and empathy and being vulnerable and opening up sometimes. And if you don't have that balance, if you just go on the hard side, you come off as a dick. And if you're only on the soft side, then you're kind of a wimp, like you're a pussy. And it's like, no. You got to find that balance between the two. And it's exactly what you described. When you play both sides of it, you just become a more wholesome person.
And one is labeled as good and one is labeled as bad, right? Without saying the words, you instantly think one is good and one is bad. And what I would challenge people with too is these people that come off as being tough all the time, right? And they do the hard things. Number one, I think sometimes the people that are doing the hard things, that they're out of their comfort zone, I actually think a lot of the things they're doing are things they choose that they're actually comfortable with. Like those are the uncomfortable things that they're comfortable with, if that makes sense.
Right. I get it.
I'll do the cold plunge. I'll do the 1,000 push-ups. I'll do the long runs. Like but
I won't do meditation.
Right.
Yeah.
Because why? Because it makes me uncomfortable. But I thought you were a tough guy.
Right.
That does hard things. And yet engaging with your emotions and doing these other things are uncomfortable for you because you don't know them. So which is it, man? Are you the tough guy that does hard things or can you not do some things because you're worried about getting your feelings hurt?
It's true. It's 100%. Yeah. Like throw me into a dance class and I'm going to be like, whoa, wait a second. This is not.
And
this
suddenly
is
you're
not
awkward and you feel eyes on you and you feel judged. It's like, I thought you were the person that does uncomfortable things. This is uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Do the thing.
Exactly.
So don't play that card. You just can't play both sides of the card. That's a big thing with me. It's like you got to flip it, right? Like you can't play both. Is it one of the? Is it the other? Right?
True. I heard from multiple instructors at the school as well. We were at the end of every evolution or whatever we were doing. We had a little bit of downtime, and we were always asking them questions about getting hired on and what are some strategies and things that we used to say. And I heard from multiple people take a cooking class. I was like, ooh, that's a good one. Like I would not consider myself a chef or good in the kitchen whatsoever, but that's something that I could easily say, oh yeah, I'm going to stretch my comfort zone here and actually like go out and learn about cooking and how to do it properly. Cause we all know the most important tool in the firehouse is the kitchen table. So,
well, here's an interview tip for everybody is that instead of trying to figure out what the questions are going to be, and then trying to memorize your answers so you hit all the key words. And then what the problem is then if the question's not quite what you practiced and you can't hit it the same way that you practiced, or if you're trying to remember something word for word and just spit it out to make sure you hit all the boxes and you kind of stumble, then you're screwed. So what I think people fail to do is actually think deeply about all of the main topics that you probably might be covered in an interview and actually form opinions on those things.
Right.
Like right now, I don't know what questions you're going to answer me. You're going to ask me. Like this is an interview, right? You're asking me questions. I don't know what's coming. But I obviously have thoughts and feelings and opinions on these things. So I don't have to have memorized answers. You and I can just talk like human beings. So the best interview prep is just to think deeply about all these things and form actual opinions on them. And then when you go to talk to someone, ask me anything. I'll just tell you what I think.
Yeah. And talk to other people about it. Don't just keep it in your head. Right.
Yeah.
So I feel being a podcast host and talking to people is probably the best interview prep I could ever do.
Sure. It's just a conversation. And we're talking about fire, which I love. So,
there you go.
Ask away. Right.
You mentioned as well flipping the script on common sayings.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few written down that
Mm-hmm.
I'd like you to give me your thoughts on. You could say, "Yep, that is actually 100% true," or maybe they're misleading, and I'd like to flip it. So the first one is always be a student.
Mm-hmm. I think the underlying message is absolutely true that you should always be a student. Yeah, if you get in the headspace that you are done learning and you're only providing information, you're going to get left behind because things do change. And I've had enough experiences, even with something I've been teaching for a decade or more, and a student in the class will show me something that they saw from somebody else, and my mind's blown, and I change immediately. So I'm chasing those things now. Like I love when people engage and offer what they think or what they were shown from other people, because I want to try it myself and see if that's a way that I can get better. So yeah, always be a student of the craft. That is an absolute truth. But you do need. I think the best way to know something is to try and learn it well enough to teach it to somebody.
Mm,
So there are times, and so when I'm always a student in the background, but when I'm there at SFA, I can't behave like a student because I'm instructing that day. Like I'm there to give to you. So you are always a student, but there's times where you need to be the instructor, right? And the mentor and the guide. Because
be a student so that you're good enough to teach it.
Yeah, and then you could even think about if you need to know, like say you're a class and there was a certain topic, and for the sake of you graduating, you need to know 50% of the topic. I need to make sure I know like 75 to 80% of it,
Right.
so that I'm not missing anything that you need to know. But if I only know 75 to 80% of something, and I'm in front of a group of peers at a conference that know 85% of it, I need to know 100% of it or close to it.
Does that also go into the why? I know I'll give an example. When some people failed the tests at SFA, like the morning test, and then I offered my knowledge and experience at the end of the day to go review with them. Now the test was identical, and a lot of the students just wanted to know what the answer was, but I wouldn't give it to them. I would say, no, you have to explain to me why it's that answer. And so once they understood it, they're like, oh, well, I knew that all along. Right. But now you've said it, you've taught me, and now you'll never get that wrong again. So I did that every day. So I believe that understanding the why also makes you a better student.
And it's tough as an instructor because everything with fire, if you're talking about a house fire specifically, you can't talk about fire behavior without talking about ventilation. So, and then part of that are the things that happen within that fire. So you can't talk about that without talking about water application. So then that leads to handling the hose, right? So that leads to, the nozzle reaction, and that leads to how the hose needs to be handled, and then how it needs to be pumped, like how it needs to be deployed. You see how it just goes down a rabbit hole? So
friction loss, you name it. Yeah.
So this is what Kyle Ramaga says, like everything leads to the pump. And this is how you end up speccing trucks when all you really cared about was nozzles to start with. So, but my point being is that a really good instructor can touch on the other pieces within that subject in the web that matter in that moment without going too far down every single rabbit hole and sort of overwhelming everybody. And they can tie them all together. And so you're showing people how it all connects. And then when you speak specifically on ventilation, you will have to touch back on the fire behavior stuff, right? So, and the more they hear that, the more they start to connect the dots, and the constellation, I guess, starts to take shape.
Cool. Next saying, take more initiative.
I think take more initiative is a little limp when you don't know what the initiative that you should take is. So yes, but you should be guided by someone to say, here are the things you're responsible for. Right. You shouldn't have to ask me to do A, B, and C. So just take the initiative so I shouldn't have to ask you every day to do these things. Or, when we're on a medical call and you realize that you can handle what we're facing and you think, it's a good time for you to step in, it's okay to take the initiative and say, hey, do you mind if and then go ahead, right? And and this is a good mentor is never going to step in and take over for a person that they're guiding unless there's absolute dire consequences if they don't. So I would always let people that I'm mentoring know that if I ever do that, it's not about me not trusting you or believing in you. I don't think you're not capable, but this wasn't being done. It had to be done right away. So I did it and took that away from you, but we're going to talk about it after why. And then the more that we go on calls and I see you doing the things at the tempo that you should be doing them at, the more I'll just step back and let you take it all on, because you need to have the actual experience.
Cool. Next one, treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah. Why not? Why wouldn't you treat people the way you want to be treated, right? And then you also need to treat yourself the way that you would treat a friend. So that's a common refrain that firefighters will say, well, I'm my toughest critic, and I have higher standards for myself than other people. I think it's so elitist to say that. That's like saying, I don't think other people are capable of having the same standards and rising to the challenges in the same way I am, so I have higher standards for myself. Like, you're placing yourself above the other people when you say that. I have the same standards for myself as I have for everybody else. And we're all capable of meeting those.
Totally agree with you on that. Like, the standard is the standard, but then treating people the way that you want to be treated. The reason I brought this one up, I specifically listened to the Brass interview that you had, and this was one of the topics that was brought up. Okay. And I think you pushed back on it, and you're like, some people, or maybe it was Broussard that pushed back on it. You know, some people prefer, no, yell at me, tell me everything I did wrong so I can learn from it, versus some people need you to take them aside. And like you did with Michaela at the school, like we were tying off the halyard and you wouldn't let her leave until she understood exactly how to do it and she could do it without looking. Right. She didn't need to be yelled at. And if she was, she would have never learned how to do that.
Okay, so here's what I would say. I would say that a great instructor is able to see in the students what they need, and putting yourself in their place. And if I was them, this is how I would need to be directed. And so you can start to get a vibe off of people with that. You can read people really well. And then I'm treating them the way I would want to be treated if I was them. Right. Now to add a caveat to this is that there's a difference between helping and hand-holding, right? And guiding and like coddling. So I'm not there to coddle anybody, and I'm not there to hand-hold for anybody. I'm there to be a guide. I'm there to, support and scaffold. But I think I probably mentioned this to your class too, that this job's a personal growth opportunity, and we all took this job because it is hard. You're literally here because this job's hard. So why would you want to come into the job and into the academy and just blow through Easy Street and get your cert? Like, why would you want that? Why wouldn't you want to come out realizing you did some things and pushed yourself and expanded, and can you come out differently? Like, why wouldn't you want to recognize not only some weaknesses that you need to work on and face, but some strengths that you didn't think you could tap into? So this is a fine line, right? Like, so I guess when I say treat people the way you'd want to be treated is that I never think that I have to yell at, belittle, or talk down to, or, add your adjective here to students. I think speaking to them in matter-of-fact ways, this is the fact. This is a hard fact. You need to be fit for this job. And if you're not, the skills you're doing are showing you, like the skills will show you if you're ready or not. So I don't need to tell you that you're not. And then
you're going to come to that conclusion very easily, and very quickly. Yeah,
and then you're going to rise to that challenge or you're not. And then if I'm showing you something and you're realizing that you're not ready yet, that doesn't mean not ready ever. So I can't be in an academy and say that person will never be a firefighter.
Right.
But they're not ready yet. So you shouldn't be going into the academy with the idea like, I paid my money, I'm going to go through the motions and I get my cert. Like, you may fail out. And that's the most harmful thing we could do to somebody, is just passing them and pushing them through to let them get what they want. Because so if we only think about this as the student themselves, and don't think about, you're not going to be good for the people out there, you're not going to be good for me, like screw all that. Think about them as a person. The most disrespectful thing I can do, well, two things, is push them through when they're not ready, because they could be hurt or killed, right?
Right.
And
Or
also
hurt or kill somebody else.
yeah. But just as I'm saying, just out of respect for the person themselves, right? Whether they know it or not, they're not ready yet. So you shouldn't have this yet because you're not ready. And lastly, if I look at them and think, I need to bubble wrap this job, I need to bubble wrap you, I need to worry about my words, I need to soften everything, what I'm saying to that person is, you are not capable of handling anything that I give you, so I have to soften everything for you to get through. Like, that's the most disrespectful thing you can say to someone, as opposed to, I think you're capable of getting through this. I think you're capable of taking this challenge and growing. So I'm going to put the proper amount of pressure on you and speak to you in matter-of-fact ways in reality to wake you up without making you feel belittled, and then you can either rise to that or not. To me, that's way more respectful than me worry about every single word I say in bubble wrapping the job.
Totally agree. Last one I have for you. Get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, so we kind of talked about this, right? About choosing the things that we want to be uncomfortable with. So yeah, if we're going to say that we're the kind of people that do hard things, I think you need to get out of your comfort zone. You also need to be expanding what your comfort zone is. So I shouldn't be uncomfortable doing ladders for my entire career. Like, ladders should become part of my comfort zone. Like these foundational, the basics, which everyone preaches, which are legitimately the foundation and are very true, that every firefighter needs that. And that also ties into, well, we do everything as a team. We do everything in pairs. It's like, no, we don't do everything in pairs. We're a team of individuals that try and divide up the work as much as possible to get as much done as we can in a short amount of time. Yep. So to say we do everything as a team and we're always going to have other people there is a total farce. Sometimes you do have to do things together and work as a team, yes, but we need individuals that are individually strong and not weak links. So and if your only thing you're ever doing is being out of your comfort zone, you're also going to you're going to be off balance too much. So you need to balance things that are in your comfort zone that you're good with, and then start adding discomfort and leveling up, right? You don't go in first day at the gym and then do crush a CrossFit workout. Like, you need to start figuring out what the gym even is and how to use this equipment. So getting out of your comfort zone doesn't mean pinning to Dave Goggins. It means, like, what's your first step, right?
It's absolutely true. We had a good training evolution last night. We were doing second and third floor search, ground ladders and aerials. And our first evolution, our officer had us all in one room. I was like, what are we even doing here? This room's like 10 by 12. 4 people do not need to be in this room right now. So the getting out of your comfort zone would be letting your team do the work and trusting that they can do the job. Like for him, that was stretching his comfort zone, not having his hands in and seeing everything and doing all the work. It's like, you can stay there. You can stay on the ladder. Like, we got this. So oftentimes it's not just doing the hard thing. It's stepping back and letting other people do what they're good at.
Right. And I keep coming back to instructing, but the only way you become a really good instructor is by instructing in a really crappy way for a long time. Like, you have to eventually start trying and then do it in a clunky, crappy way. I very often think back to, recruit classes I taught, and not that I wasn't I was a good instructor and I was helpful and supportive, but by the time I got to my 5th recruit class, I wish I could have gone back and give that same game to the first recruit class, because I had grown so much after all those experiences, right? So you just have to you have to do the thing and throw yourself. Like, if you're in a group of people and someone has to go first, like, literally throw your hand up and say, I'll go. Just go first.
That's how you'll learn. You'll learn.
Right. And then as instructors, we need to do that too, and show that even though we've done something 1,000 times, you may make a mistake. And what do we model then? We model that you do another bunch of reps until you get it again. So what you're modeling is not perfection, but the striving for it, and then the humility to realize you're not going to reach that all the time, and then the perseverance to keep at it to make sure you perfect it again.
You hit 2 of the key words: being humble, and then having that hunger, that passion to improve. 100%. Totally agree.
Yeah.
I've heard you say that there's a difference between helping people when you want to and helping them when they need you to. Could you expand on that for me?
Yeah. We very often, this is a comfort zone thing, right? Or it's an easy thing to say in an interview. Why do you want this job? I want to help people. I think often what we act, whether we know we mean it or not, is I want to help people in a specific way that I want to help them when I want to help them. And that definitely changes as or it gets worsened, I guess, as you've been on longer, that you start to have a different gauge of when help is required, right? If it's not burning or people are bleeding out, don't even call us. And I'm not saying that I enjoy going to the stub toe call, but this is part of the professionalism, right? So you do have to just do these calls, and people are calling you, and it may be the first time they've ever called 911. Maybe they're not aware, like people aren't perfect. And yes, we could be somewhere else, and maybe we're slightly out of our area. And if we get a fire in our area, like we're stuck in the next truck in, like there's a lot of things you could talk about why that's a waste of the system. Like it obviously is. I'm not arguing that it's not, but if you truly want to help people, then you're going to help people in the way that they need to be helped when they need to be helped, not picking and choosing. Because that's not about them, it's about you and how you feel, and you feel good about it and comfortable, right? And you get to pat yourself on the back, and that's the day that you wanted. So that's really not getting out of your comfort zone. Would be running the calls that you don't necessarily want to run.
What does that look like on a call, for instance?
Well,
just like paint a picture for us. What would that look like?
Yeah. Well, like I gave an example of maybe a medical call where there's 5 cars in the driveway and the whole family's there, and they could have gotten the car and driven them over and went to triage and went through the system. And there's this idea that, well, if I go by ambulance, I'm going to get seen quicker, which is not true. You just get put into the same system. So if we go in there and we have a crappy attitude about it, and we really want to put that all on the people, and we're rolling our eyes, and this is a waste of my training and blah, 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 blah. But, if you think about apartment fires, like how many alarm calls do you go to before you actually have an apartment fire? How many cooking on the stove, burnt toast calls do you go to before it's actually a house fire? Like how many fender benders do you go to before it's actually an extrication? So you do sign up for the fact that there's going to be these false positives until you get the positive. It's just part of it. And obviously we need to be educating, and there's a nice way. I guess you could let people know, like, hey, by the way, next time, like, just in case, if there's time, let them know, like, this is probably the way the system is going to support you better, and this may be not the best use of it, or maybe that's the captain that needs to be handing that down. But yeah, and it doesn't mean you can't get in the truck and you can't complain and roll your eyes and have the bad attitude afterwards. Like, I'm not saying you have to change your whole outlook on it, but you need to be professional and just help people the way they need to be helped when they need to be helped. And it's part of the job. And out of the thousands of calls you're going to run, right, there's a lot of them that are going to be not in the brochure and not sexy. So that's just part of it. And again, I'm not perfect at that. Will be the first to say I've had a shitty attitude on calls when you're overrun and tired, and it's not a useful part of our skills, but I'm trying to obviously help the next generation be better at it than I was, and I'm trying to be better at it as I finish my career.
Maybe I'm naive, or I'm just too new, and the novelty is still high, but I've always said since I got on, every day that you get to ride in a fire truck is a great day. Mm-hmm. We had 3 calls in one day just last week. 2 of them were false alarms. One of them was kind of something, but nothing really. It was a hat trick for me. I was like, this is great. I got to sit in a fire truck for 3 times in one day. And I'm not even getting paid for it. Like, this is so fun today. Mm-hmm. I want to keep that mindset as I go through my career, and I want to get on as a career firefighter. So yeah. What would be your advice for me to keep that passion alive?
Yeah, and I think the way we could frame making use of these calls we go on to is that every medical call that you go on, that you get to hear normal breath sounds, or hear a good blood pressure, or feel a good pulse, or see a good skin color on somebody. Like, all those are building your Rolodex of this person's not sick, which is going to help you recognize when people are sick or their lungs are not sounding normal, because you've listened to normal lung sounds 1,000 times. And I know that sounds abnormal. Whether you know how to name it or not, you know what normal sounds like, or their pulse doesn't feel normal because you've felt a lot of normal pulses. So it's reps, right? It's a rep doing that thing. And then when you go to these BS, you call them BS calls, like CO check calls, or these nothing medicals, you're getting a chance to go into someone's home and like see, you're getting to actually cheat, right? You're getting to like see what's like this house like on the inside. Where did I think the stairs were? What's actually on the floor here? How would we move hose in here? Right? Or on the way out, you're checking smoke alarms so that, it's not a waste of time. You're looking up, oh, that smoke alarm looked like it's out of date and it doesn't work. Now, if we change those batteries, when we show up, the people are going to be out of the house, right? Like you may have saved someone's life by doing this thing on this nothing call that you weren't even there for that. And then when you get outside before you leave, you could look at the house and go, where are the bedrooms? What do the windows look like? How would I ladder that? How would we deploy hose here? Oh, there's 4 feet of snow on the lawn and the cars are in the way. How are we going to stretch that? How do we get to the backyard? Like that, look at that kind of door. How would I force it? Like you can actually use that call, that's bullshit, to kind of like prep for and build a Rolodex of the things that are going to help you when you actually get on calls. So
I love that perspective.
It's not a fake hack. It's actually a legitimate way to practice.
That's very cool. I know you've created a set of rules. You have them posted on your website, rules for instructors and rules for senior firefighters. What would your top 3 rules for a rookie be?
Top 3 rules for, there's a lot of lists out there for a rookie.
You've been around for a while, so I just want to know yours would be. I know like Jordan Peterson has his like 12 rules for life, but what are your 3 rules for a rookie?
Yeah. I would be critical in my mind of what I'm being told. Not doubtful, but I would take things in and really try to pull them apart and think about them and think about how that might align with the other things I've heard people say about that same thing. So when you start to hear the same, 5 things about fire attack and over and over and over and over from people that are vetted, you can really start to trust that, right? So not everybody that's going to give you information that you're going to meet knows what they're talking about or has the right attitude. So I would try to figure out who you can trust and who you can't. How do you discern? And you can just, everybody that teaches you something, you can take something from them or just, smile and nod, be respectful. You don't need to be confrontational. I'm just saying, don't just take it for what, like, as rote. I would say that would be one of my main things. Understand that the second one would be understand even the best intentioned department can't give you everything you need to know about the job to be a good firefighter. You're going to have to seek it out outside of work. And the great thing is if you have downtime at work, you can seek out stuff outside of work at work, right? This is podcasts. This is YouTube videos. This is, go to a conference a year. If your money allows it and your time allows it, go to something outside your department. I'm not the first person to say that. I'm repeating it. I'm a medium. I'm passing it through. And then I think I would also want them to have the right level of expectation on themselves. So I let every rookie that I got first day, let them know that there's more expectation on me than there is on them. Because I've been here longer and you've been here for a cup of coffee. Like you have the excuse of ignorance, of lack of time, and I should know better. So what do they learn from that? They learn that, I'm only expected to be good at the level that I'm at now, and I'm not expected to hit the floor and be a superhero. And they also learn like, oh shit, the expectations increase over time. You don't just try to get to first class and then hit the recliner. Like the expectations never stop. They only get more intense. So they learn like, this won't end until I'm done. And then I guess I'll just add a little bonus on there that if you're bored with this job, it's your own fault. It is impossible to know everything about everything in this job. And
Agreed.
You can focus on some things and become really good at them, but you're also, as you do that, you're becoming crappier at other stuff that you don't focus on. So literally, if you're bored, just change your focus and try to learn something else because it's absolutely endless.
That's amazing. Anybody that's a CrossFitter listening to this, the same applies. We start with where you are and build from there. So we don't expect you to be elite the day you walk in. And then, it's never over. There's no finish point. I showed somebody today, we had a new guy come in. We have this map of athletic progression, and it ends like one thing was the deadlift, and the map ends at 500 pounds. I'm like, but that's really not the end. Like it keeps going. It's just for here, that's where this map ends. But yeah, just like in the fire service, it never ends.
You can use firefit as an example, right? So running that every time, no matter how fast you run it, it's going to suck because you're pushing to your absolute limit every time. So your limit keeps moving and you just get faster. So you're right. Everything's like that. Every workout you do, like of course there's going to be some maintenance ones that feel okay, but once you start getting to a level, like your next workout should keep, like they just keep sucking.
Have you done firefit before?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How was your times?
Well, I mean, back in the day, I wasn't slow. I mean, it would be considered slow now. I think the fastest I ran a bunch of times was like 129.
That's fast.
So,
dude,
I mean,
what are you talking about? You're too humble.
now, if you look at times, guys are running it individually as fast as a team runs it. So they're in like the 108s or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry about the team.
I'm just saying, like in the era of the time of what we knew and what we were doing, it was okay. It wasn't the fastest, but I wasn't the slowest. Let's put it that way.
It's cool. I did it for my first time last year, and I won fastest rookie for the event. So nice. It was like a 2:03, which I thought was slow, but apparently it was the
That's
fastest,
amazing for a rookie. Absolutely.
First time, yeah.
Yeah, anyway. Some guys come out and run, low 40s, low in the 30s their first time because they're just gifted athletes. Like some are just better naturally, right? So
anyway, I think Brantford is hosting this year.
They are, yeah.
In Ontario. We only have one out east this year. Last year we had two. There was one in Nova Scotia and one in New Brunswick. Mm-hmm. So now there's only one in Nova Scotia. There's none in New Brunswick except the championships.
Nice.
So I kind of want to do two events before the championships. So I think I'm going to come out to Brantford. And
I think Oakville usually runs one every year now too.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I didn't see that on the schedule yet, but maybe they're not done with the finalization or whatnot. Yeah. So yeah.
Or Oshawa. Is it Oshawa? Maybe it's Oshawa that does it every year.
That would make sense.
I got my names mixed up. It's Oshawa.
Yeah. Like Matt Back is a guy that kind of he's a beast.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
He's with Oshawa.
Oakville.
Yeah. You've been involved in peer support for how many years now?
Well, I did it, in a focused way in Brampton for 10, 12 years, like as a member for a couple and then as a co-lead for a while. And then obviously when I left Brampton, I wasn't a part of peer support teams beyond that. Okay. But I think anyways, we can talk about this. I think I obviously have opinions on peer support, so fire away. Yeah.
So I just like to hear like what are two things, I guess. What are some early signs that somebody in the fire service might be struggling? And then is there something that firefighters can do to take care of their mental health before things get bad?
Yeah. Okay. So talk therapy isn't for everybody. I don't think it maybe should be part of everything of all the other things that we do and could do. I think if you should get a counselor like before you get on the job or as you get on the job as a recruit. I think we all have things that are underlying that we're bringing into the job. I don't think the job itself, we don't come in as blank slates. So to say like, oh, the job did this to me. It's like, well, you probably came in with a lot of stuff that you've never addressed and the job then exacerbated those things or added on to it. So if you go in and you figure out like, so we would understand if you did baseline blood testing when you first got on the job, because then you could look back at the job and and all your exposure reports and see, here's my baseline, here's my numbers now. The job obviously was what led to this, right? So if you go into the job with a baseline of your mental health, where you're at, and you're keeping track of, and even in Brampton, we had one of the drop-down menus on the union website for exposure reports was psychological exposure. So you could log calls, not anonymously, privately, confidentially, of that you went to that were possibly psychologically harmful, whether you knew it at the time or not. Like you would log an exposure for a house fire without realizing that, in that moment you're like, oh my God, I have cancer. Like you're like, this might add up over time, right? So why wouldn't you do something that an exposure report for something you don't necessarily feel like you're harmed by it immediately? It's not overt, but over time, those things add up. So why wouldn't you also want to log that to support your case in the future if you ever had to go off with a mental health issue? So Getting back to the question, getting a counselor ahead of time, you're also able to shop around and find someone that you align with without having to, when the moment is you're in crisis and you need someone immediately, and you not only don't have anybody to go to right away and may take some time, but you might get someone you don't really connect with. And now you're super frustrated because you're in this terrible space. So if you find someone while you're in a good space, like finding a doctor before you're sick or finding a dentist that you like before you have issues, you've got that in your back pocket and you know you trust them. You've got a baseline. You've got some water under the bridge. You've dealt with some things. They know who you are. And when you dive in with the issue, you can just pick up from that moment on forward, right? And I usually joke, I kind of joke about it, but it's kidding on the square. Like I think of that Christmas Vacation scene where Clark hands a little bit of knot here, Russ, and he hands the Christmas lights to Russ, and they're a giant ball and knot it all up, right? Like I just think it's the perfect analogy for if you don't, deal with the things in little bits along the way, that's what you're going to be trying to unravel, and it's really, really hard to do, or if not impossible. So that's, I think, is one of the key things. And then obviously we know a healthy lifestyle, exercise, the job is going to ruin your sleep. Hard stop. So you need to figure out, how do I rest and recover to the best of my ability, even though I'm going to continuously be on the back foot with my sleep. So, Why We Sleep by Matt Walker. I think everyone quotes that book that people should read. And the other one I would add would be The Body Keeps the Score. That's one I always tell people they should read. Man's Search for Meaning is another one by Viktor Frankl. So a few of these things will, they'll reinforce the messages like I'm giving to you right now, or other people are saying the same thing. And you were asked about the things you could see in somebody. So you can't always do that, right? Some people will so I would use an example of, I get on the job and I meet the gruff, salty, 28-year veteran on the department, right? And, you could make a comment to someone like, wow, he's really, fill in the blank. And people will say, oh, that's just Bob. Like Bob's always been that way. But they've never known Bob like healthy, right? Bob might not have ever known Bob healthy. If you go 30 years with the same way, you don't know another way. So very often, we don't know we could feel better and be better until you actually feel better. So
that's funny you say it. That's what Jesse and I talked about. That was a whole segment on the show.
So until you make the change and you actually feel the change, you're like, holy shit. Before we jumped on here, we talked about seasonal affective disorder, right? So that's a really good analogy that people experience themselves. You didn't realize how down in the dumps you were until the sun hit your face. You're like, oh my God. So we experience that so many times. We don't then extrapolate that and expand it into these other areas and realize, maybe the way I'm feeling, maybe my normal is actually a 5 anxiety, and I don't know what a 0 feels like. So until you do the things and you actually hit a 0, you're like, holy shit, this is a 0. And now you have a whole different frame of reference, right? And now you're not going from a 5 to a 10. You can get yourself down to a 2, and you know what a 5 feels like. So it changes your whole perspective on it.
Kind of reorients you a bit.
Yeah. So, and I don't think you can always read people and know that they're struggling. I think, and you
That's
can't, we also can't expect everybody to offload their entire life on everybody around them. Very often, some people are dealing with practical problems that talking to somebody or everybody at work isn't going to solve.
Right.
And maybe they have people outside of work that they're working this through, and they're just soldiering on. And some days are going to be hard days, and that may be a reality for people. So I know we want to help and we want to fix everybody, and we should all be, expressing everything. I think by these conversations, people are going to hear that they should take some ownership and they should reach out and talk to somebody. But I think we can't all we can do is offer the opportunity. They call that holding space, right? I would offer to hold space for you, and you can trust me, you can come to me. But if you choose not to, then that's not on me. So, but at least what we can do is set the culture, set the stage, allow the opportunity to be there. And then if something, God forbid, ever did happen with that person, we knew we did our best.
Right.
And we could mourn the loss and grieve the loss and the tragedy of that, but we wouldn't feel the shame and the guilt and the ownership of we should have, woulda, coulda.
Right.
because we did the best we could to make this culture viable for people to get help and feel connected and cared for.
It's 100% true. I resonate with what you say. I've had 2 close friends commit suicide and 1 attempt, and you would have never known at all. However, providing that opportunity, that open space, is the most important thing, not just for them, but like you just said, for you as well, to know that you did what you could. There's nothing else you could have done. They made that decision, but you gave that space for them. So,
and then lastly, on the peer support thing, I would say that if we all acted like peer supporters, we wouldn't need peer support teams. Like brotherhood, when we say brotherhood, that actually is peer support. Like that's what that is.
Right.
So I always saw my job as a peer supporter was to teach myself out of a job. So I should be opening these minds and perspectives and offering a different way of viewing and operating so that the whole department operates like that. So then we don't even need a team because we're all on, and we don't just put it on a team to do that work and we just check out.
It's not separate. It's part of the culture.
Yeah. And if we all operate like that, we're good. We're as good as we can be. Yeah.
Right. How has your approach to mental health changed over the years? Like you've seen this, like you talked about, like years and years ago. Maybe you're not that old, but like the gritty, tough, hard things. And then obviously things have changed since you started in your early days of firefighting. So how has your views changed or approach?
Yeah, I think I touched briefly on that. We talked a bit about how if you bring your emotional self to the call at the proper degree, that it helps you process the calls. And I think that message is starting to be understood. And then people feel like they're also more authentic and more genuine, right? So you don't feel like you're bringing a false self to work and to these calls, and you're actually doing the job that you wanted to do. Whether it's been said out loud or not, you can feel it. I don't think we'll ever eliminate stigma. I don't think you're ever going to eliminate racism, sexism, ageism. Like you add an ism, you're never going to eliminate it. But my goal, my thought, and what I was trying to convey was we can own the house. We can become the majority so that the people that have those horrible views, they're the minority viewpoint, and they feel that they can't be purveying that or, saying that because that's not the culture we operate in.
Right.
So we can become the majority and own the house. And that was, so we don't need to eliminate stigma. So I also think we need to at some point stop just talking about stigma altogether because we've kind of talked it out. And then you need to move on to what the next thing is. Okay, we know stigma. We know, okay, good. We all get that? Yes. Now what's the next thing? Now that we got over that, like the stigma really is only a barrier that shouldn't exist, that we have to get by before we actually start talking about the shit that matters.
Right.
Like the only reason it's courageous and brave for someone to speak their story and tell their truth is because of the culture that they're in is a bunch of assholes. Like it wouldn't be brave if it was normal.
Right.
Right. We're always focused on like, oh, you're so brave. Why are we not focused on the people that are making it the fact that you have to be brave to do this?
To be. Yeah.
Like that. See how that flips it?
That is a flip.
We put this onus on the people themselves that are struggling as the ones that have to be brave. It's like, how about the rest of the people stop being assholes? How about that?
Fantastic idea.
Yeah.
And it starts by being the example.
Yeah. And, I'll just make sure we touch on this because I try to say it as often as possible because I think it opened my eyes and I hope it would open other people's. Is sometimes we're told things that I think are well-intentioned. I don't think people speak them out of malice or trying to, give us half help, but something like kid calls are the worst. Okay. So you hear that time and time and time again, over and over, people keep telling you that. And then touching back to you being in school, you're getting inundated with so much information. You don't have time to dive down the rabbit hole and pull everything apart. So when you hear kid calls the worst, you're like, yep. And you log it and you just move on. Right. The trouble is if you keep hearing that over and over again, and that's all you're told, as soon as a call comes in that's pediatric, you're already primed to think this is going to be the worst. Okay, so you're already primed to be affected by it more than you maybe should. And then the flip side is if you go to that call and you come back and you're not affected, you think, what's wrong with me? I was told these are the worst. I went to this call and I'm actually okay. Am I some kind of monster?
Right.
So you're literally screwed either way. And then so what I see kid calls are the worst as I tell you, fire is dangerous and it can kill you. And I walk out of the room. Right? And so the way you can pull this apart is ask yourself, at what age does it stop being the worst? So if you go to a call and you're like, you thought they were 16 and you get back to the hall and you find out some information, they were actually 18, you're like, holy shit, thank God, that would have been the worst. But now it's not because I realized they're 18. So whew, I'm good.
Right.
Like it's so ridiculous. So at what age does it stop? And you can't give me a number. And that whole thought process, that thought experiment blows that thing apart and you realize that it's not helpful. So never
Stop
give
saying it.
Yeah, we'll never, but then never give a problem without giving a solution. So what is my solution to that? My solution is, my recommendation is take the calls as they come. Take the calls as they come. And if you are affected by it, because you're going to gain some self-awareness and you're going to be honest with yourself and realize what your normal is and what you're, and, you know, and then every call may affect you and you should come out of that over a short period of time and you get back to your baseline again, right? But if you're affected for longer than that, or it's really dramatic, then you know what to do about it. You know what to do about it personally in your daily life. You know what to do about it getting professional help. You know you have people around you at work to help you. So take the calls as they come. And if they affect you, no matter what kind of call it is, no matter how old they are, and no matter what the situation was for you, it bothered you, and then you know how to deal with it. To me, that's way more helpful than saying kid calls are the worst.
Right. Just blanket statements that we're just going to fuck you up anyway. So,
But I think people are well-intentioned. They're trying to protect you by saying it. They just
Yeah.
didn't think about it all the way through. And that follow-up question of when does it stop? What age does it stop? That was never said. So I'm just saying, so the last thing I want to say about this is that is all over the place. Like, if you can ever take something that you hear as a blank statement and try and pull it apart, like start looking for that everywhere. For me, that opened my perspective. Like, what other things have I been told that were never fully flushed out?
right.
So it's not just learning that thing I just told you. That should open people's minds. Like, holy shit, what other statements do I just accept? Right.
I hope the people listening to this take that into their daily life, because you're going to hear that not just in firefighting, but in your workplace, in your community, in your families. You're going to hear these common things said over and over again. And so just like Scott said, pick it apart, because it's going to serve you better and you're not going to be as affected by it. 100%. Scott, this has been an amazing conversation. I want to thank you again for coming on. I always end my episodes with the same question, and I'd love to hear what your definition of resiliency would be in your own words.
Sometimes I don't think we know that we're resilient until we've come out the other side of the thing that we survived. So you may not feel resilient in your darkest, hardest times. You may not be resilient, and you may be leaning on other people really heavily because you have no resilience left. I think that being said, I think at our lowest points, we all need to take some accountability for our own agency. Like, so as a peer supporter, it's the peer support team, not the peer do for team. And our goal is to help you regain agency and control over your life. And that would be our part, as well as counselors, et cetera, et cetera. But the only way you start to feel more in control of your life, like your internal locus as opposed to your external locus, is by like having some wins. And they talk about, if the win was that you remained on the planet today, like if all you had to give was 30% today, that's 100%, right? And just know that resilience, I would say resiliency doesn't feel like not being affected or hurting or suffering. That's not what resilience feels like. Resilience feels like surviving sometimes. And then on the tail end, you're like, I made it through that thing. And lastly, I think I would say that we only ever hear the stories of the people that made it through. Mm-hmm. We don't always hear the stories of the people that didn't make it. And there's this judgment that, because they didn't choose to be resilient, that they were somehow weaker than us. But, you could look into like World War II planes that came back and they were all shot up, and they wanted to increase the armoring of those planes in the areas where they were shot. And someone was bright enough to think about, wait a minute, those planes made it back. The planes that didn't make it back got shot in the other areas and blew up or crashed. So actually, where we need to armor up the planes are in the areas that of the planes that that made it back that weren't shot up. Again, it just flips it, right? So
that's a big flip.
Yeah, so you can look that up. That's studied, right? That's what actually something that happens. So there's a lot of these examples all over the place. So I would just say sometimes there's a survivorship bias. And I remember seeing a meme one time. It was like a stick figure standing on stage with all this money, and they're like, "I won the lottery, and you could too. Just keep buying tickets." So sometimes we only hear the story of the people that made it through, and they're preaching to us about if I just do all the things you do, I'll make it through too. And it's like, I'm not you, and you aren't experiencing what I'm experiencing, and I can maybe learn from the things that worked for you, but it really is, we are all alone, and it's a personal journey, right? And I think we need to give a lot of grace to people that didn't make it, and not just see them as being weak because of the way that they, that their suffering overwhelmed them. So yes, we want to be resilient, but yeah, I think I have a really deep empathy for people that didn't make it.
I appreciate that perspective. That's a new one. Like, this is episode 180 something. Mm-hmm. And that's the first time I've heard that side of it. So
yeah, on top of feeling like they don't want to be on the planet anymore, we're putting this onus on them that they need to stay and suffer so that other people in their lives don't suffer. Mm. I'm not saying that it's the right choice. I'm just saying that's a perspective, right? That the person we love that we want to stay for us, we're asking them to stay and suffer so that we don't suffer.
Right. Scott, again, great conversation. If people that are listening want to find you on the socials, where would they find you?
Multiple Calls Podcast is the IG handle. I'm the one that runs that. So I don't have personal social media. I just figured it would be too much to have my personal page and the podcast stuff. So that's the only one I run. I'm the only one that runs that. And then that auto populates to the Facebook page. So I'm on there once in a while to check it. But if you want to get a message to me, that would be the quickest way, because I'm checking it regularly and trying to put up stuff that I feel is of value. On the actual website, if you go on there is a contact click, and then I'll get an email. That would be a more roundabout way to go about it. Or emailing me directly, multiplecalls@gmail.com. You can do that. So I think those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Anything else you want to tell our listeners before we sign off tonight?
Keep following what you're doing. I think it's a great message, and you're going about it the right way. So I think people are going to get a lot of value at it. So keep listening.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Scott. Appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate you too.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest episodes, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.